If I were to be asked what game should have been updated and remade, the original Metroid would definitely be pretty high on the list. While I understand a lot of its limitations were a product of when it was created, they definitely hinder my enjoyment of the game. So, when I heard about Zero Mission going back to modernize the original game, I was definitely interested in seeing how it played out. But how did it do? Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. They did a very good job of resolving the most glaring issues that the original had. Kraid and Ridley were both challenging in their own right, but not overwhelmingly difficult, and Mother Brain was toned down to a difficult but still manageable level. The map system and more varied environments were also greatly appreciated, and many of the additional bosses were interesting and creative. But with all the fixes they put in place, they also created a few issues. The first being the problem many prequels tend to fall into. If Samus had access to all of the key items that she knew she would need on returning to Zebes, why wouldn't she keep the Varia and Gravity suits on when she returned? Why wouldn't she keep the power grip for generally moving around, seeing as it allows her to get to many out-of-the-way areas? It may not affect this game much, but it's still an issue. The second is how much more linear the game is now compared to both the original and nearly every other game in the series, especially the gold standard of Super Metroid. There are a few spots where you can move around with a bit of freedom, but like Metroid Fusion before it, exploration is put to the wayside in favor of a theoretically tighter story. However, there are very few story beats added to the original formula, which means that you gain very little and lose quite a lot in the exchange. Overall, however, I am happy with the improvements this game provides over the original. The difficulty increases were where they needed to be, and the parts that needed to be made easier generally were. I think they went a little too far in making the game in general easier, meaning there were very few spots that I really felt in danger of losing progress. The 4 main bosses were notable exceptions, with each feeling just right, and the Zero Suit section was perhaps a touch too difficult to all told. But it felt pretty good overall. So with all that said, I would definitely say this is the one to get started on the series with. There's a lot here that is good, and the problems that I have with it have very little to do with the core mechanics. It's a fun game, and lacks many of the issues that made the original Metroid so frustrating to play through. So, with that taken care of, join me next time when we start our first journey through the Metroid's homeworld, in Metroid 2: Return of Samus. Until then, Magius out.